Well, thank you all. It's great to be here, and thank you for those kind introductions and for recognizing my achievements with the Alumni Award. I'm deeply moved by receiving this award. And it's great to be back home. As my spouse and I flew over Galveston Bay and the beaches this morning, I was all of a sudden flooded with the memories of where it all started for me. But enough of that for a while. I'll get back to that in a second. Thank you, Provost Mouton, for having me here today, and other UTMB administrators, PA Department Chair Phil Pott, PA alumni who are here, faculty and staff for this opportunity. But most importantly, graduates, congratulations. This is awesome. You should be proud of your accomplishments and confident about your future as a health professional. I remember this moment 35 years ago in this very hall like it was just yesterday. So it's great to be back here and be in this room with you all. And when I say congratulations, I don't mean it in a compulsory way. We congratulate graduates. When you started your program 2 years ago, the world was turned upside down. The uncertainty, anxiety, and frankly, panic were palpable. And your healthcare training and education were truly, at some points, a trial by fire. If you were like me, the exhaustion and chaos and loss and tears and hard work and pure grit have likely left you feeling a little overwhelmed. Though I'm sure you question your calling as a physician assistant 1,000 times a day during the past 2 years, thank you for your perseverance, your compassion, and your commitment to your patients and your community. Though your path was tougher than anyone would have thought a few years ago, you changed the lives of countless patients, their families, and your entire community. And for that, you were and are a shining light during a very uncertain time of our history. So it's good to be home, as I said earlier. And I say that knowing that my literal home is in Wichita, Kansas, but Galveston and Houston always hold a special place in my heart. During my time here, I spent a lot of time on the nearby beach. Probably you all have done that from time to time, celebrating Mardi Gras, spending time with my lifelong friends, and hundreds of hours studying in Moody Medical Library. This is where I grew up, where I discovered my interest in science and healthcare. And it's where I learned that medical professions are much more than curing the human body. I want to tell you a story about my time here at UTMB that really has shaped how I practice medicine as a PA and how I live my life today. So COVID-19 isn't my first go-around with a virus. I began my medical career during the early days of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in 1985. In fact, in the early days of my PA training, I was thrown on the wards of John Seeley Hospital to see a patient who had what we called at the time HTLV3, or human T lymphotropic virus type 3, kind of a mouthful. We didn't even call it HIV at that point. As with COVID, there was so much uncertainty, fear, misinformation, and some of the uglier manifestations of the HIV crisis, and unbearable loss and ignorance. One of my mentors was Dr. Richard Pollard, who was a professor in the medical school and a former director of the Diagnostic Virology Lab in the Division of Infectious Diseases here in the time I was studying here. He called himself a herpes virologist, and because of that experience, he is one of the first physicians who cared for HIV patients. Unlike most people, he understood the enormity of the illness and that it would require a different approach to treatment and patient care. I started working with him as a student, as the very first PA student. He had never had a student, not a medical student, and it was my last rotation. I think you all still call it the preceptorship. You may call it something different, but that's what we called it in those days. And he had never had a student on the ward, and he accepted me as his first student. Dr. Pollard used to carry a stack of index cards in his lab coat pocket, rubber banded together, kind of frayed, thick. And I remember wondering, what if those cards became misplaced or lost? Because each of those cards represented a patient in the HIV clinic and ward where we worked. and along with it, precious information on the lives of the patients we were treating. Many of them shunned by their families. Some of them had passed on. He had the very first patient at UTMB diagnosed with HIV on one of those cards. Now, you have to put things in context. This is before HIPAA, and healthcare was not fully digitized at that time. But we did have archaic computers, ancient things called floppy disks, and spreadsheets, kind of rudimentary spreadsheets that collected and stored patient data. And I frequently offered to enter that information in those cards onto the computer. I could never seem to pry those cards from Dr. Pollard. But then it occurred to me in a very humbling and heartbreaking way why that was the case. Dr. Pollard had been there from the beginning, caring for these patients who had been rejected and ostracized by their family, friends, and society at a time when they were so desperate for understanding and care. Those cards were a tangible connection that were tethered to Dr. Pollard, these patients, and one of the few people who hadn't given up on them. That epiphany opened my eyes to the reality that healthcare was so much more than easing patient suffering or physical suffering. It was about listening and understanding and bridging the gap between being a patient and being a person. That lesson has been my North Star in how I live my life now and throughout my career. In my current role as the president of Wichita State University, I've swapped patients for students, but the same concept still applies. People are more than their symptoms, their majors, their grades, or any other label that you may give them. Each has his own story and her own reason why. So another valuable piece of advice came to me from the late Dr. Richard Rare, former chair of the PA Studies Department here at UTMB. He told me to always take advantage of opportunities as they arise. When a door is open for you, walk through it, he said. That lesson has led me from a career as a clinician, then a faculty member, a provost, and eventually the 15th president at Wichita State University. As you go forward and begin your careers as physician assistants, you have so many possibilities before you. And I hope you seize the one that you feel right about and that feels right to you. When I graduated, I never would have imagined, nor had I any inkling or ambition that I would become a president of a university. But I'm glad I pursued the path, the path that you all just completed, and I have no regrets about the journey I've been on for the last 35 years since I earned my degree here at University of Texas Medical Branch. And I'm still a PA at my core. I left the clinical setting when I became a university administrator, but my tie to UTMB and the lessons I've learned here have been a connection throughout my life. Whatever you do after you leave UTMB, I have no doubt it will be remarkable. And like me, you'll be equipped with the value-added education that comes with training to become a health professional in the midst of a new disease, as well as the sense of community you built here and hopefully a strong sense of purpose. I want to caution you, though. How our society measures your success will shift. You'll no longer be judged by your grades or your GPA or your academic achievement. Hold true to who you are and the person and professional you become here at UTMB. Remember the reasons you chose to become a physician assistant and willfully and stubbornly choose to define your own success by measures of compassion, empathy, and courage. The final piece of advice I want to impart to you today is stay curious. It's the best part of being a healthcare provider. Getting to meet and learn about some of the most interesting people along the way. No one else gets that privilege. You might breathe a sigh of relief when you leave here, knowing that this exhausting leg of your journey is over, but you're not done, not by a long shot. There are always new insights, diseases, breakthroughs, discoveries to be pursued, injuries, aches, and pains to be treated, an abundance of patients who seek answers to what ails them, and puzzles to be solved. Your job will be to listen, educate, decipher symptoms, and ease discomfort and suffering. Your curiosity and willingness to seek out and innovate solutions will be the keys to your own success and to better outcomes for your patients. So again, congratulations on your achievements. I wish you all the best as you go out and change the world. Thank you.